The world is a small world, right? The basketball world is even small. So sitting here, we got Don DeJulia, who was the AD at St. Joe's, and Jim Foster was the head coach at Bishop McDevitt High School. Then he went on to St. Joe's, then he went on to Vanderbilt, then Ohio State, then UT Chattanooga, and now he's retired. But when he was coaching high school, he said to me one day, he said, you wanna help me coach basketball? I said, what basketball? And he said, I just got hired to coach this girls' high school basketball. I said, who the hell would want to coach girls? This was 1975, 6, around there, right? I mean, no, maybe even before that. Like I was still in school, so yeah, it was before that. And he said, no, come help me at practice. So I went to practice, and eventually, after like the 5th time, I went to practice and I said, let's see, I'm 21, 22, and they're 15, 16, 17. And I said something, and they all looked at me like big eyes, like, ooh. And I said something else, and they're like, wow. And then after the 3rd or 4th thing I said, and they're like nodding their head. And I thought, hey, this is pretty cool. I got like all these kids think like I'm smart. So I went back again, and then next thing you know, I get a phone call, and Jim goes, hey, I just got the head coaching job at St. Joe's. And I said, how? Like, how can a guy like you get a college job? But he did. Don DeJulia knew what he was doing, and he hired Jim. And I went with him, and I got a raise to $1,000 a year. And so that's a small world. So now I'm coaching, I'm helping at Kathy Rush basketball camp, and Phil's running the camp. And Phil sees me and he goes, what are you doing coaching women's basketball? I said, I don't know, this is what I'm doing. And he said, come coach with me. So I went with him to go coach. And then Debbie Ryan, who's in this book, she got the award, hires me at the University of Virginia, and that was my first head coaching job. That was my first like big college job. I was at UVA, and I spent 4 years there. So, then I got a chance to get the Connecticut job, and I went up there, and during the interview, they said, well, if we hired you, who would you? I know, I'll be finished in a second. I get it. So they said, who would you hire? Who would your staff be? I said, well, I would hire Chris Daliey. Now, the person I was interviewing me had been the head coach at Penn State. So she knew of Chris from her time at Rutgers. And she looked at me and she goes, she would leave Rutgers to come coach here at Connecticut? Like nobody goes to Connecticut. Even the kids that were going to school there didn't want to go there. So she was all excited because I was going to hire Chris Daliey if I got the job. So I get the job, and then I call Chris, and I go, hey, I got the job at the University of Connecticut. She goes, no kidding, congratulations. I said, yeah, I told him you were going to be my assistant. She said, you're out of your mind, I'm not coming up there. I said, come on up. She came up, looked around, and said, I don't like it here, and I'm not coming. I said, come on, come here. And for less money, and no car, and a lousy place to live. But she took the job, and the rest is history, because if she hadn't taken the job, I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't have had any success that I've had, and Connecticut basketball would not be Connecticut basketball without her.